The ceramic mug shattered against the cafe floor, coffee spreading like spilled blood across the tile, and in that split second before chaos erupted, Marcus Webb made a choice that would change everything. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Before we dive into this incredible story that'll have you on the edge of your seat, do me a favor and hit that like button if you believe in standing up for what's right. And if you're new here, subscribe and ring that bell because we bring you real stories about real people who remind us what courage looks like. Trust me, you won't want to miss what happens next. Marcus Webb had been coming to Rosie's Cafe every Saturday morning for the past 11 months, ever since the accident that took his wife Sarah. The small corner cafe on Maple Street had become his sanctuary, a place where he could bring his 6-year-old daughter Emma and pretend, just for an hour or two, that their world hadn't completely fallen apart. The familiar smell of fresh coffee and cinnamon rolls, the gentle chatter of weekend crowds, the way sunlight filtered through the front windows and painted golden rectangles on the worn wooden floor, it all provided a comforting rhythm to lives that had been violently disrupted. Emma sat across from him now, her small hands wrapped around a hot chocolate topped with an embarrassing amount of whipped cream, her feet swinging beneath the chair because they didn't quite reach the floor. She was drawing on a napkin with the crayons Rosie kept behind the counter for the kids, her tongue poking out slightly in concentration the way Sarah's used to when she was focused on something. Marcus watched her with that peculiar mixture of love and heartbreak that had become his constant companion. She had Sarah's eyes, that same warm brown that could dance with mischief or melt with compassion. Sometimes looking at his daughter was like seeing a ghost, and sometimes it was the only thing that kept him breathing. "Daddy, look," Emma said, holding up her napkin masterpiece. It was a drawing of 3 stick figures, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one with a triangle dress and pigtails. "It's us. You, me, and Mommy." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "That's beautiful, sweetheart. Mommy's in heaven, but I can still draw her, right?" "Of course you can. Always." The cafe was busier than usual that morning. A young couple in the corner booth were laughing over shared pancakes. An elderly man sat by the window reading a newspaper. A group of teenagers occupied the large table near the back, their phones out, their conversations overlapping in that chaotic symphony only teenagers could orchestrate. And then there was the man who'd just walked in, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing an expensive leather jacket and an expression that suggested the world existed solely for his inconvenience. Marcus recognized the type immediately. He'd served with men like that in the army, though they usually didn't last long in Delta Force. All swagger and ego, no substance. The man's name, Marcus would later learn, was Derek Thornton, a local real estate developer who'd made his money tearing down family businesses to build luxury condos nobody could afford. Derek moved through the cafe like he owned it, his voice too loud, his gestures too big. He cut in front of an older woman waiting to order, didn't apologize, and snapped his fingers at Rosie when his latte wasn't ready within 30 seconds. Rosie, a woman in her 60s who'd run this cafe for 20 years and had perfected the art of killing with kindness, simply smiled and told him it would just be another moment. Marcus returned his attention to Emma, helping her sound out words from the children's book they'd brought. This was their Saturday ritual: cafe breakfast, reading practice, then a walk to the park if the weather was nice. These small routines had become the scaffolding holding their fractured lives together. After Sarah's death in the car accident, after the funeral where Marcus had to carry his sobbing daughter away from her mother's casket, after the sleepless nights and the impossible task of learning to be both parents at once, these routines were all they had. Emma was struggling with the word butterfly when Derek's voice cut through the cafe's pleasant murmur like a chainsaw. Are you kidding me? This coffee is cold. The entire cafe went quiet. Even the teenagers looked up from their phones. Rosie approached Derek's table with that same patient smile. I'm so sorry, sir. I just made it 2 minutes ago, but I'll be happy to remake it for you. 2 minutes. Derek's laugh was sharp and unpleasant. Lady, I don't think you understand customer service. When I pay $5 for coffee, I expect it to be perfect. Of course, sir. Let me just. But Derek was already standing, holding his cup at arm's length like it contained poison. You know what? Forget it. This whole place is a dump anyway. I don't know why people come here. His eyes swept the cafe with theatrical disdain, and that's when they landed on Marcus and Emma. Marcus saw it happening and tried to deflect it, dropping his gaze back to the book, keeping Emma focused on her reading. But Derek was the kind of man who fed on attention, who couldn't let a moment pass without making it about himself. I mean, look at this place, Derek continued, his voice dripping with contempt. Family cafe, more like a charity case convention. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Rosie's smile had frozen on her face. Derek wasn't finished. His gaze had fixed on Marcus's table, on the shabby backpack hooked over the chair, on Marcus's worn flannel shirt and jeans, on the way Emma's clothes, though clean, were clearly hand-me-downs or thrift store finds. Marcus had been wearing his wedding ring on a chain around his neck since his fingers had gotten too thin, and it was visible now above his collar. Derek noticed. Single dad, Derek said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Let me guess, wife finally got smart and left, or did she just realize what a loser she'd married? The cafe went from quiet to silent. It was the kind of silence that precedes violence, the kind Marcus had experienced in a dozen countries on 3 continents, the electric moment before everything explodes. Emma looked up, confused. Daddy. Marcus kept his voice level, gentle. It's okay, honey. Keep reading. But Derek had tasted blood and wanted more. He walked closer to their table, and Marcus could smell expensive cologne and entitlement. I'm talking to you, buddy. You deaf or just stupid? Oh wait, I bet I know military, right? You've got that look. Let me guess, couldn't hack it in the real world, so you put on a uniform and followed orders. Now you're back, what, working some minimum wage job living off sympathy? Marcus's hands, resting on the table, didn't move. But anyone who knew what to look for would have seen the minute tension in his forearms, the slight shift in his posture. He'd gone from relaxed to ready in a heartbeat, though his expression remained calm. Daddy's not stupid, Emma said, her voice small but defiant. And Mommy didn't leave. She died. The cafe seemed to collectively hold its breath. Derek blinked, but instead of backing down, he doubled down. Some people were like that, incapable of admitting fault, so committed to their cruelty that even obvious boundaries meant nothing. Oh, that's rich. So you're using the dead wife card to get sympathy? That's low, man. That's really low. Rosie had come out from behind the counter. Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. I'll leave when I'm ready, Derek snapped. He turned back to Marcus, leaning down now, invading his space. You know what your problem is? People like you think the world owes you something because you put on a uniform and played soldier. Newsflash: nobody cares. Your wife is dead, you're raising your kid in poverty, and you're sitting in a dump cafe pretending everything's fine. You're pathetic. That's when it happened. Derek, in his aggressive posturing, had gotten too close. His hand, gesturing wildly, knocked Emma's hot chocolate off the table. The cup flew through the air, cocoa and whipped cream spraying across Emma's drawing, her book, her dress. She cried out, more from surprise than pain, and Derek's coffee mug, the one he'd been holding throughout his rant, slipped from his other hand and shattered on the floor. And Marcus moved. It wasn't like in the movies. There was no dramatic pause, no warning. One moment Marcus was sitting, and the next he was on his feet, his body between Derek and Emma, one hand catching Derek's wrist mid-air. Derek had instinctively reached toward Emma when the hot chocolate spilled, maybe to steady himself, maybe something else, it didn't matter. Marcus had his wrist locked in a grip that made Derek's eyes go wide. "Don't," Marcus said quietly. Just one word, but it contained volumes. For a man who'd spent years in Delta Force, who'd been part of operations most people would never read about in declassified documents, the control required to not break Derek's wrist was considerable. Marcus could feel exactly how much pressure he was applying, could calculate the 17 different ways he could end this confrontation in under 3 seconds. But he also knew Emma was watching, that this cafe was full of civilians, that the man in front of him was just a bully, not an enemy combatant. Derek tried to pull away and couldn't. "Let go of me." "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Marcus asked Emma, not taking his eyes off Derek. Emma nodded, wiping cocoa off her dress. "I'm okay, Daddy." Marcus released Derek's wrist and took a step back, putting more distance between the man and his daughter. "You need to leave. Now." Derek rubbed his wrist, his face red with humiliation and rage. "You just assaulted me. I'm calling the police." "Please do," said a voice from the back of the cafe. It was